Welcome to another Inside Track edition of the Digital DJ Tips podcast, where we take three big issues here at the Digital DJ Tips School from the last month and expand on them in front of a live audience of our students. So we've got topics today covering surprising things that have changed in the world of mobile DJing. Think weddings, anniversaries, parties, corporate DJs in recent years and how you can capitalize on them if that's the kind of gig you play. We're going to look at whether we've reached peak features on DJ gear. Are there just too many gimmicks on DJ gear nowadays? And are some companies guilty of forgetting what DJs really want? And finally, we'll talk about whether platters, turntables, jogwheels, things that spin on DJ gear are even necessary anymore, with reference to a piece of equipment designed by one of our own tutors, which has been launched recently, that dispenses with them. So I hope you'll agree, a good range of topics. As always, a live studio audience from our students to help me along with it and to add extra colour to what I have to say. If you enjoy listening to this and you're not already a subscriber, then do subscribe on your usual platform and give us a 5-star review, please. They really do help. But now, let's get on with it. So our first topic today is something that's come about because we've been talking quite a lot about mobile DJing and how mobile DJing, the turning up and playing at a venue with your own gear, and it's a wedding or it's a corporate event or it's a birthday party or a children's party or something like that, how that style of DJing has evolved over the years and certainly over recent years with the rise of social media platforms, TikTok and Instagram Reels and so on, and people filming in vertical, of course, the best bits of events and sharing them with their friends with the old wish you were here tags and so on, and how this has impacted the way mobile DJs do their job, right? It's changed mobile DJing in quite a few ways. And so we're going to talk about some of those ways now. I've got 5 of them for you, which again have come out of just chats with students in the community and so on. And they're all good to implement if you have ever been asked to play this kind of event, especially if you're not used to doing it, or you do, but you just feel like you maybe are missing a few tricks that younger DJs are kind of doing without even thinking, almost instinctively, then this is definitely for you. So here they are, our 5 surprising tips for modern mobile DJs, as influenced and inspired by the community here at Digital DJ Tips. So number 1, and this isn't about you personally, although you should, but it's about the gear that you take and the way you set up. Make sure you look good. Because nowadays, everything is visual. Everything gets filmed, everything gets photos taken, everything is shared on social platforms. And if you've got a messy setup, if you've got a DJ console with wires everywhere and it's ugly and it's made of badly painted chipboard, which is itself dented, and you've got leads trailing off to ugly speaker cabinets, and the whole thing just looks asymmetrical and messy, or even worse, you've got tired old signs with your name on them and old MySpace addresses on vinyl banners that you've never changed in the last 20 years. And I'm sure you're picturing the kind of mobile DJ I'm talking about. And if you want to indulge your slightly crueler side, why not go and take a little look at Google Images and just type in ugly mobile DJ setup. You don't want to be that person, because nowadays looking good is a prerequisite. And that means that everything that you take with you and everything you set up has to look the part, has to look neat, has to look modern, has to be lit well, and has to give the impression that you are aware that you're going to be photographed and you're going to be filmed. And so there's a few very, very simple tips here. The first one is, if your DJ gear lets you down, in other words, if you're a bit embarrassed by what you're DJing on, there's nothing wrong with DJing on gear that costs $200, $300, $400. There really isn't, because modern DJ gear can do so much, and a lot of DJs are scared of playing out because they think their gear is going to look a bit amateur. Here's a really good tip. Go to the companies that sell hard cases. So these are the cases that come with big pieces of metal across the corners, and they're made of wood, and they've got big handles or even wheels on them maybe, and they open up. And when they open up, you take the lid off, and inside there's foam, and into the foam is cut a hole where your DJ gear sits, right? You are picturing the kind of thing already, aren't you? Get one of those for your DJ gear, because even if you've got a tiny DJ controller, it's immediately going to look professional, and it's immediately going to look good in one of those, because what you do is take the lid off and you leave it in the bottom half. So now when you set up, your gear looks about 4 times bigger than it really is, and it immediately looks professional. It's now a control surface in a professional flight case, right? So there's a really good tip there. If you've got the confidence thing going on about your gear, stick it in a flight case. Now, the next thing I would recommend is to get a proper DJ table. Now, DJ tables don't need to cost you an awful lot, but the beauty of modern DJ tables, and we have one here in the studio at Digital DJ Tips from a company called UDG, is that they fold up and clip together. So they're almost like the kind of decorating tables or the workshop tables that you see craftsmen using, that can be folded up and clipped together and carried or put into the boot of a car and so on. But when you unfold them and clip them all together, they're a professional work surface where there's a shelf underneath, but only you can see that. But at the front, it's presenting a really nice, closed and neat and tidy view to the crowd. So all your cables and your wiring and so on is going on underneath, and it's going on away from what other people can see. It's a starting point for a really tidy setup. With your speakers, it's a good idea to have them obviously on poles, because having them on poles gets them up to head level, but you don't have to have messy wiring that everyone can see, because you can easily put cloth around them, which you can buy for your DJ stands, which will tidy all that stuff up. And again, if you put a very small wireless rechargeable light on the floor pointing up inside, then that is going to look really nice, and it's going to make your speakers suddenly be a talking point rather than a mess. Again, the cabling is still going to have to get from the speakers to you. It might be they're quite close to you, so that doesn't matter. If not, then some tape, gaffer tape, duct tape, whatever they call it in your part of the world, holding the cable down is the right way to go. And you can get different colors, so you can pick one that suits the color of the flooring that you are taping it down to. So I'm giving the general stuff here, which works for most DJs setting up for a reasonable amount of money, especially if you're new to this. But when it comes to lighting, you can easily get lighting rigs that have got pretty much a bit of everything on. And that is very easy to set up on a bar that, again, is either a single bar with a T shape that goes across you, and you can have one behind you, and then when you get a bit more money, you can buy the same thing again and then push one to the left and one to the right of you, so it all stays symmetrical. And one of the lovely things about lighting nowadays is that there are some very good wireless lighting setups. And the wireless lighting setups are good because they allow you to put lighting around the venue as well. So I'm thinking the kind of lights that sit and light up the walls of the room, and you can control them wirelessly from your position with a small controller. And this just allows you to get everything looking very neat indeed. And again, they charge up and they'll give you a whole night's charge very simply. And they're you know, lighting has become so cheap nowadays because it's all LED. It's all got, it's called cob lighting or chip on board, and that means they've got control built into the lights, which you can get control of and do some really cool things with them. And when you're going to get really complex, and by complex I don't mean it's difficult to use, it's just you need to buy the right system, you can have the lights all coordinated with each other, which obviously is very, very nice because you can have the whole venue switching colors instantly and so on. But all of these things are based around this basic concept that you need to look good when you are DJing nowadays. You cannot be messy. Because if you are messy, you're going to get photos taken of you and you're going to look embarrassing when people share stuff on socials. ATGR says, I love the Swan flight cases from the UK. They're customizable and they have very good Black Friday sales. And as we're approaching Black Friday, maybe worth having a look for that. And Craig says, there is a page, I've forgotten about this, Craig, thank you for reminding me, called Bad DJ Setup. And if you have an untidy setup with wires everywhere, you might end up on that page. It's always worth an interesting look. Go and have a look for the Bad DJ Setup pages. So Nigel says, Even scrims are beginning to look old now. Scrims is just the DJ word for the pieces of cloth that you put over the bottom of your speakers to hide the tripod and so on. Most people are using gravity stands, which are a heavy base plate with a pole. And then, of course, the wire can go up the back of the pole, or maybe they can even go through it, can they, Nigel? But anyway, thank you very much for chipping in there for our live audience, for our students. It's fantastic to have you here to help. The second of our 5 tips is make sure you're doing at least basic mixing. Because nowadays, your audience expects you to be able to mix your music. Think about it. Couples getting married nowadays were going out, let's say between 10 and 15 years ago, right at the peak of the EDM explosion. And they were seeing DJs mixing music. So there is no way, and I'm just using weddings as an example here, there is no way that they want a DJ at their event, at their wedding, at their anniversary party, at their birthday, mumbling into a microphone and clumsily blending between tracks in the way that DJs have done in years gone by. It's completely unacceptable. Because think about when you're on TikTok, think about when you're on Instagram, think about when you're on YouTube looking at the shorts. The bits that people share are the transitions. So you better have some good transitions up your sleeve. And the thing is that there are basic mixing techniques that you can use on all music. What I hate is when I hear DJs saying, oh, mobile DJs, they're just jukeboxes, they're just glorified PA announcers. There's no craft, there's no skill in mobile DJing, because those people are at best ill-informed and at worst just plain rude. They're doing a disservice to DJing in the whole, because it's much harder to mix properly with the kind of music that most mobile DJs enjoy playing and their audiences enjoy hearing. In other words, the biggest hits across multiple genres, across multiple decades, than it is to just mix a single genre. Anyone can do that. But there are techniques that will get you through any gig and that will mean that your transitions sound sharp and they sound smart and they sound good. Now, in our Mixing for Mobile and Wedding DJs course, that's what we teach here at Digital DJ Tips. But just basic things like mastering the echo out and the reverb out and the basic cut between 2 tracks and how to loop the end of a track so you can do a clean beat mix when maybe it wasn't possible. These are not hard to learn, and you can prepare your tracks ahead of time so that they're not difficult to do at the time as well. So if you're not doing it yet and you want to look good and sound good as a mobile DJ in the modern age, do master that. And the beauty, of course, is that modern gear makes that a lot easier as well. So the third tip, the third of our surprising tips for modern mobile DJs, is one that we've been talking about a little bit on the site and at the DJ school recently, which is the crucial difference between timeless hits and hits of the time. Timeless hits and hits of the time. Hits of the time can mean 2 things. The current hits, the current tracks which are big, and also tracks which you think the people who you are DJing to will remember from when they were, in inverted commas, young. In other words, if you can play the music that people were hearing when they were first going out, or when they were first hearing pop music, when they were 10, 15, 20 years old, you're probably going to get them on the dance floor now that they're 30, 40, 50 or whatever. They're the hits of the time, right? So it could be the current hits, or it could be hits that were big when people were first going out. It's good DJ advice generally. But as pop music's matured, there are a whole collection of songs that have almost transcended all of that. And they're what we call the timeless hits. And we got into this conversation because we were talking about things like Sweet Caroline. We were talking about things like Take Me Home, Country Roads. We were talking about things like Zombie Nation, yeah? We're talking about those really, like Seven Nation Army by White Stripes. We're talking about those really big songs that have literally transcended pop music itself and become anthems of our generation, anthems of our species. They're the timeless hits. And you'd be a well-advised DJ nowadays to make sure you've got a selection of both types of music. Because a lot of the hits of the time don't carry very well. They fade. And they don't sound so good now, even though people did danced to them once in their lives. And a lot of the hits that are current right now that you think are going to work well on mainstream mobile DJ type dance floors, again, we're talking weddings, corporate events, birthdays, anniversaries, and so on, are likely to not work as well as you think. And the reason for that is you love music, whereas the people on that dance floor are probably a mixture of people who never dance, who sometimes dance. I mean, you might have a few who always do, lucky you, but you're going to get a lot of people who aren't, whisper it, they're not really into music. And so the big hits of today are not really going to be on their radar unless they become mega hits over the next year or so. So really, current music is anything from the last couple of years as far as the people who aren't really into music are concerned. So do make sure you've thought about, where are my timeless hits and where are my hits of the day? And are they really hits of the day? And if I've picked tracks from the past that I think are going to appeal to my audience because of the age they are they big enough? Do they still sound good? Were they big enough at the time, or have they been forgotten? Now, I do want to bring in a third category of music here for the advanced DJs in our crowd, because these are a little bit riskier, but if you are sure from experience and from your hopefully higher musical taste that they're going to work, they're worth playing with. And these are the tunes which people have forgotten but are really, really good. All DJs have their tunes, their hidden weapons, right? Having those in your box is better than having brand new records that are really good that no one knows, because people will suddenly remember them and they'll go off. The reason we're talking about this now actually is that it's worth bearing in mind this reason. We've got a feeling now that pop music has kind of matured. Pop music is not in its early experimental stages anymore. Pop music's grown up, and that's why the best DJs are ploughing back and picking the timeless hits from the past and blending them seamlessly with current music, that in a way that maybe they didn't do a few years ago. Pop music's been influenced by Spotify playlists, which are doing the same thing. They're blending the old and the new. It's definitely been influenced by what trends on TikTok and on your reels and so on. And it's been influenced by things like Netflix, which has leaned really heavily into tunes from the nostalgic recent past, right? With things like Stranger Times, but there's many more shows. And so these tunes kind of blow up out of nowhere, right? Remember Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill last year. So do think about this. Do think about all of these things. As pop music develops, you've got a whole palette of tunes behind you that you can be drawing on. So the fourth of our 5 surprising tips for modern DJs is to pre-read your crowd. So pre-reading your crowd involves doing your research. So when you get to the venue, or at least when it gets to peak time for your DJ set, you're pretty sure you know what they want. And social media has made that a lot easier. If you're booked by a certain person, a certain group of people, a certain association, a certain couple, you can dig into their social media very easily, and you can look at them and their friends, and you can see what they're into and the gigs they've been into and the music they talk about. Pre-reading the crowd, researching. Of course you can talk to them, that's the old school way, and you should definitely do that. But I've known DJs literally wander around the room at a wedding when people are eating, or early on when people are arriving and chatting and there's no need to dance and the music's not loud yet, and literally just talk to everyone. Hey, what would you be, what music are you into? What would you be dancing to later if this was the best night you've ever been to, etc., etc. All of these things are valid, but I think pre-reading ahead by using social media is a bit of a secret weapon. The old school way, of course, is what we teach here at Digital DJ Tips as the dartboard method. When you imagine every genre of music as a dartboard where you've got different genres in different areas of the board, and you throw your arrows early on and you try and hit every part of the board, and you keep an eye on the crowd, and you keep an eye on, as you're playing like a random haphazard set of genres earlier on, you keep an eye on which people are smiling and tapping their feet and looking at you, and this is giving you an idea of what genres to go to later on in the event. But pre-reading the crowd is a really good tip, and it's easier than ever to do for the modern DJ thanks to social media and so on. So let's now talk about our 5th and final tip. And this I've put in here because while the rest of these are all pretty much things that have altered or come to the fore because of modern DJing and the way it's moved. This is one that inexperienced DJs feel they don't have to do anymore. A few years ago, they would have known they would have had to have done this. But now, because of festivals, because of going to clubs, because of beat mixing and club DJing and DJ mixes and boiler rooms and so on, DJs, especially who are new to mobile DJing, think they don't have to do this anymore. And of course, it's talking on the microphone. But talking on the microphone, when done properly, is your secret weapon. Talking on the microphone, when done badly, is a little bit like overusing DJ effects, right? We've all heard the DJs who use effect on top of effect on top of effect in order to get from one track to another, right? That's a bad way of using DJ effects. And the microphone has been used in the past. We've touched on it here already today. The microphone has been used in the past to do just that. You know, you mumble into it and you mix in the next song. I don't mean you personally, of course, listening to this. But if you use the microphone strategically, it is a shortcut to getting people to do what you want. It's messages like calling out people by name, making people remember why they're there and that this is going to be a great night. Asking people to dance, dedicating songs to people that you've been asked to dedicate to people. And this is something that strikes fear, real fear into people who are not used to this. A lot of us DJs are quite introverted. We don't want to talk on the mic. We hate the sound of our own voice, etc., etc. My biggest tip to you is to talk slowly, to talk clearly, to get everyone's attention before you actually say what you've got to say. And it's fine to ask for their attention. Excuse me, everyone, can I have your attention, please? And if it doesn't work, ask again, keep asking until you get it, and then say what you want to say. Talk so slowly that it feels almost uncomfortable, and turn the music right down. It's fine to turn the music right down. You don't have to have the music going slowly in the background or going quietly in the background while you're talking. Just turn it right the way down. That's fine. But if you use the microphone early and often, you will find that you will have to use it less later on because of that. If you spend the time warming people up, getting to know your audience, talking to them, interacting, encouraging them to dance, calling out the people whose party it is, reminding people why they're there, and get all that why they're there, getting all that done early on means you're going to have a more fun night later on because people trust you to be doing your job. You're bold enough to get on the mic, you're bold enough to tell them who's who and what's what. And then later on, you won't have to do it so much. You won't be doing it out of panic. You won't be doing it because you've got to. You'll be doing it because you want to, because there may be a reason or two in the second half of the event. So lots of suggestions about the microphone on the live chat here as we record this with the Digital DJ Tips student. Thank you for those. I'm just going to read out one of them, which is a reply to a couple of students chatting, asking about what microphone do you recommend? And you've recommended perfectly in my view, which is the Shure, S-H-U-R-E, SM58. It is a timeless, effective, inexpensive, well, reasonably inexpensive, and indestructible, well, mostly. Thank you, EJ, for that. So, there are 5 surprising tips for modern mobile DJs. Look good because it's a visual world nowadays. Learn basic mixing, it's going to make the world of difference. Play the timeless hits as well as the hits of the time. Pre-read the crowd. Use social media to get to know the people you're going to be playing for. But don't think you don't have to use the microphone nowadays. You really do. It's your secret weapon. It's going to help for sure. Now, our second topic today is something completely different. We're going to talk about DJ gear for a little while. And we're going to talk about whether we've actually reached peak features on DJ gear. Now, this has been brought about by the release of a few pieces of gear recently with new features that have, as new features tend to do, divided the community. I'm thinking particularly about the Alpha Theta Groove 6 controller, but there's many. I'm not singling it out. I'm not saying this is particularly good or bad or whatever, which has got a feature that lets you drop out the drum sounds of a track while it's playing and replace it with other drum sounds. You can have drum loops, and they've got some built in. So you can add an extra kick drum. You can turn a house track into a big room house track or into something a bit more laid back. You can add break beats to songs and so on, but it's all at the touch of a button. It's quite neat. I think it's called the Groove Circuit from memory. And it divided the audience. It literally divided our students down the middle. Some said, oh, it's really good. I could be using that myself. I think that looks cool. Others were like, what the hell's this thing? It's just rubbish. You know, what's the point of paying money for features like that on DJ gear? And so it did get us thinking whether we've reached peak features on DJ gear. Another thing that's triggered this recently is a debate that goes on in the forums and in the comments underneath videos online, right? This is the online keyboard warriors. I'm sure you've read them. You might even have been one at times in your life. And I spend a lot of time here at the school, of course, chatting to people online, chatting to people underneath videos and in our forums and so on. And I think I'm going to be a little bit contentious here in what I say. So this is it. This is what I've got to say about this. I think there is a difference between the vocal online minority of people who hold a certain opinion about this kind of thing and the silent majority who are too busy to be online, very much anyway, because they're out there actually DJing a lot. Okay? I get this sense, having done this for decades, that there is a big body of DJs who are just DJing for a living or out there in the clubs, playing in public, who are just getting on with it. And then there's a smaller number of DJs who are not. But they're the ones who we tend to hear from the most in the comments. And so I think we need to take comments online with a little pinch of salt when we are deciding whether it's what the real community actually thinks. To get down to specifics, this idea that DJ gear, year after year after year, has to pack in more and more and more features. And if a company releases a piece of gear and it doesn't have new features, it's a failure, or they're falling behind, or they're being lazy, or they're charging too much for their gear. Because I've got a feeling that most DJs want reliability, they want flexibility, they want familiarity, and most of all, they just want their gear to be easy to use. So I have a feeling that for most DJs, and I do count myself among those, they want the basics done well. And it's absolutely fine to have new features. It's absolutely fine to have innovation. It's absolutely fine to really enjoy this stuff. We're going to be talking in a little while about a very unusual DJ system that we've reviewed recently because it was actually invented, or at least designed, by one of our tutors, which certainly isn't what I just described. So, you know, I'm not saying that it's bad to want new features or to want innovation. What I am saying is there's nothing wrong with not wanting that. There's everything right for what I believe to be at least a very large number of DJs, if not the majority, in just wanting the gear to get out of your way so you can get on with doing the real job, which is DJing. So I'm being deliberately contentious here because I want your views on this, people. And so think of the world of the guitar, right? I'm a guitar player as well as a DJ. Think of the world of the guitar. Now, my first acoustic guitar, I don't know, it was probably non-branded, but it certainly cost me 50 UK pounds, about $80. It was a while ago, but it wasn't very expensive. It actually got stolen out of my car after I'd been busking one day with my best friend. But anyway, that's another story. I now own a very, very nice Martin acoustic, which cost me a four-figure sum, and I'm very proud of, and it's in a very plush case, and I get very jittery when my daughter gets it out to have a little play of it, because it's an expensive guitar. If you put those two side by side, the uninitiated would not know the difference, because there is nothing feature-wise about my expensive Martin guitar compared to my first ever guitar. Rest in peace, first ever guitar. There is nothing features-wise that different about them. But every part of that Martin guitar is better. The wood, the tuning, the strings, the bridge, the way it doesn't warp when you know, if you're a guitar player, you'll know that when you tune guitars over time, the neck will warp because they're just cheap. Well, mine doesn't. Mine really is beautiful. It holds it. The fingering, the way that you can hold the strings onto the frets easily, everything about that guitar is superior to my first guitar. DJs, and this is what I'm contending here, DJs just want their gear to get out of the way, which means if it does the basics and it does them really well, and it does them in a way that doesn't make them think, that could be enough. And so when you get people saying, there's nothing new about this insert piece of DJ gear here, nothing new about this gear, why are they charging this for it? Why haven't they innovated? Why haven't they added this feature or that feature? It could just be that DJs haven't asked for it. And some DJ gear and some features are maybe answering questions that people don't have. Food for thought. We've got, as I was hoping for, lots of comments coming in about this, so thank you everyone. Phil's comments on gear, 100%, thank you for that. Benedict says, I agree with what Phil just said. And Benny says, I want my controller to work well, and yes, having new features is great, but the gear has to have the main basic components that I really need. And I guess what you're saying is that it has to do that stuff well, doesn't it? Craig says, are we going to get Phil playing the guitar? That would be a peak. Well, maybe, but it's certainly not something that I do regularly nowadays. However, God bless my daughter. She wanted me to show her the guitar the other day. She wants to learn a song, and she was impressed with what I remembered from all those years back. Anyway, Lou says, gear is simple. They are always going to come out with new gimmicks to sell. More important to me is keeping my DJ program updated. Yeah, you're throwing in a good twist here, which is some gear is simply designed to control DJ software. But nonetheless, that gear still can have a layout which is novel and which is something weird and exciting and different, or it can just do the basics well. An interesting thing that happened a few years ago was that even though DJ software had become quite complicated, there was a move towards controllers only controlling the important parts. When Pioneer DJ launched the DDJ 1000 controller and the DDJ 1000 SRT, which covered both the big software packages at the time, Rekordbox and Serato, they were kind of revolutionary because they looked and felt like just normal club DJ gear. They simplified the software especially in the area of the effects, and just made it feel like you were using club gear, and they were stupendously successful for that reason. And for those of you that follow the DJ gear world, I actually think in some ways they've gone too far with the replacement controller for those units I just mentioned, the DDJ Flex 10, which has drifted towards the gimmicks again when maybe people don't want them. But anyway, it's a good thing to talk about, and also a good thing to think about when you're replacing your gear with something new. What do you really need? Don't pay for stuff that you don't use. So have we reached peak features? Well, we probably haven't. We're going to get gimmicks released going forward forever more. But just like the timeless hits, most of the hits of the time, most of the gimmicks of the time will not become timeless DJ features. See what I did there? Bit of a musical segue, bit of an intellectual segue from a DJ, but you know where I'm coming from, don't you? And we're going to move on now to the final one of our 3 topics for today's show. You are listening to and watching the Any Questions podcast here at Digital DJ Tips, which is recorded live in front of our fantastic DJ course students inside our Student Hub platform. So thank you to everyone who's here for this live recording and who is contributing to the show and adding some spice onto the meal for me. Thank you very much. Let's now talk about something else which is very dear to DJs, but which is being challenged, which is the humble jog wheel. How important are jog wheels? Jog wheels, of course, are the spinny things on DJ gear, right? They are the turntables, they are the platters, they are the things that go round. They're the things that you can manipulate the music with in a very, very fluid and very natural feeling way. They're the things that you scratch with. They're the things that you spin back when you want to do that big dramatic end to a DJ set. They've been on DJ gear ever since day one. But there are DJs out there now who aren't using them at all. So how important are jog wheels for DJing? So this topic has been influenced by Laidback Luke, who is one of our tutors here at Digital DJ Tips. Now, Laidback Luke has been DJing for 30 years. Laidback Luke is a producer as well. He is a big DJ. He plays at the big festivals. He played 6 hours at Tomorrowland this year. He is a DJ that really knows what it takes to perform at the highest level in front of the biggest crowds. And Luke surprised everyone, including us, by beginning to DJ about 18 months ago on a tiny little DJ controller that was no bigger than a piece of A4 paper folded in half. Letter paper for you stateside people listening to this. Certainly not much bigger than that. A tall, thin, little piece of equipment called the Mixtor from a smaller company called Reloop. And Luke was both impressed and frustrated by this piece of DJ gear. So he approached Reloop and said, can I redesign this with you? And he did. And it's just been released as the Mixtor Pro. And we just reviewed it on Digital DJ Tips. And Luke, to throw even more into the pot here, instead of using USB sticks or a laptop, Luke started DJing from his phone. He literally plugged his phone into this controller, had it propped up at the back, and was DJing across 4 decks to the biggest audiences with just that little setup. What was he up to? Should you be doing it? What can we learn from this experience? Well, let's talk about it now. What Luke was doing, because Luke has always loved technology, Luke's always pushed technology. Not everyone is like Luke, not everyone is going to want to do this. I think what Luke's enjoyed doing here is proving a point. But there's 2 points he's proved. 1, you don't need a lot of controls or a big piece of gear to DJ. And 2, your phone's at the heart of everything, isn't it? Your phone, I mean, I don't know about you, but my phone comes first and my laptop comes second nowadays when it comes to everything I do in my life. So why not have your phone at the heart of your DJing? I think this is something that Luke wanted to push. And so he's relying on the fact that the sync button, AI used for fluid beat grids, and the platform he uses is something called DJ Pro from Algorithm, which is a fantastic DJ platform that has got AI beat grids, which basically means when you hit the sync button, it will work. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do any preparation. And so that means that you don't have to manually beat mix anymore, even less than you had to beforehand. So he's using sync with AI beat grids and also just modern mixing techniques. Mixing is moving away from the long, drawn out beat mixes into snappier techniques. We've already talked about a few. And so even if you are mixing a wider variety of music using the faster mixing techniques that are popular today, the use of jogwheels to do that kind of one ear on the headphones, one ear listening to the speaker, really finessing the mix over 2 or 3 minutes as you slowly blend from one track to another, it's kind of out the window for a lot of DJs nowadays. So if you're not touching your jogwheels very often, why do you need them? So here's a few arguments for and against, and again, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. So let's talk about the arguments for this kind of DJing. Well, look, it's really portable, really portable. It's really easy to set up. You just plug your phone in, you plug one cable from the DJ unit to a spare channel on the mixer in the club, and you're ready to go. You move the CDJs to the left by 3 inches and the mixer to the right, you can fit your gear in, right? You can set up anywhere. You can DJ on a plane, you can DJ in a hotel room, you can DJ literally anywhere that you can get that out of your bag. So it's really easy to set up, it's really portable, and it's well suited to electronic music styles. You can easily DJ when you learn the shortcuts and when you get through the learning curve on 4 decks with loops and cues and filters and effects and stems, on 4 decks with just a tiny little DJ unit. So if you're DJing that kind of style of music where you're using the sync button all the time, this kind of DJing is perfectly possible on a unit like that. And you've got the satisfaction of showing the world, anyone who is interested, that I don't need all this gear here. I don't need any of it. I can do it on this and I can do it just as well. I remember the first time I discovered digital DJing. It's about 2003, 2004. I'd been sent the very first Hercules controller. You know that brand? I think it was called the DJ Console. It was a tiny plastic box with horrible little jog wheels on it and really squidgy play pause buttons and stuff. And it didn't work well, it didn't sound good, but it came with Virtual DJ. And Virtual DJ got me hooked. I thought, remember, we hadn't seen this stuff before at all. This is before iPods, this is before download stores, this is when Napster was big. I thought, this is the future. I'm going to learn how to use this. So I had a club residency at the time and I tried to DJ with this unit, but I kept pressing the wrong, I kept going for one button and hitting something else and the music would go off and so on. I ended up buying a very good sound card and DJing with a 4-out sound card card plugged into the PCM CIA, I think they were called, slot on the side of my Sony Vaio laptop, and virtual DJ. And I was queuing straight on the unit. But the important thing here is I configured all the keyboard shortcuts. So I had nudge, I had effects and spin backs and loops and cues. I had everything that you need for DJing. I divided the keyboard right down the middle. The left-hand half was for the left-hand deck. The right-hand half was for the right-hand deck. And I learned all the shortcuts that I'd programmed myself. I could DJ with just a laptop and a high-quality sound card, and I did. And you can imagine the queues at the DJ booth to see what I was doing back in 2004. That's over 20 years ago. So I know where Luke's coming from with this. You can do it. It is possible. And you get the satisfaction of showing you can do it, as I had DJing from just a laptop back then. But it's not for everyone, is it? Of course it's not. Let's talk about some of the downsides of DJing like this with no jog wheels and a tiny little DJ controller. It's fiddly. There's no getting around the fact that you're going to learn keyboard modifiers, and you don't use the keyboard, hopefully, but you're using the keys on this little unit. You're going to be using modifiers to hold down shift to do this and that. You're going to be holding this down while you turn this and all this stuff to get all the features on a limited number of knobs and buttons. There's a steep learning curve because of that. And arguably, and this is why a lot of people might do this for a year or two and then give up, and who knows whether Luke will be one of these people. I'm not going to push him on this, I'm just going to watch. Arguably, it's less fun. There is something timeless about spreading your shoulders back, where your arms then fall naturally on two decks, and being able to control this kind of thing in front of you, this big thing that's just the right size and shape. I guess an analogy was, it might be like playing on a tiny guitar, like Ed Sheeran. You know, it's not for everyone. You need the space to spread your body out and have the stuff that's as big as it should be. I'm sure any hip hop DJs will be nodding along now saying, you ain't going to get me hunched over some tiny little box pressing buttons. So maybe it isn't as much fun. And that brings me on to the next thing. It doesn't look as good. Now, Luke can do what he wants because Luke's got nothing to prove. Luke can jump around in the DJ booth, pressing his buttons, and people will love his music and people will love his set. But look, even my advice earlier on for mobile DJs of having your kit in a nice flight case so no one can actually see that it's tiny, it might not work if your controller is that small. So it just doesn't look as good. And also I have to point out, it's not always going to be suitable. If you're a scratch DJ, or if you're the kind of DJ that's come to digital from the old way, right? You're not into beat gridding, you're not into sync, you're not into using lots of effects, you don't want to use 4 decks. You just want to simply mix tracks together in the way you've always done. You ain't going to be able to do it on a unit like that. So look, it's not for everyone. I think the takeaway here is that, and this is again back to the wider community, and I'm not talking about the community here at Digital DJ Tips, who are famously open-minded and famously up for hearing everyone else's views. But the kind of wider community of keyboard warriors I was talking about earlier will say things like, it's got no this, it's got no that, it's not got this, they want $500 for it, whatever it might be. Rubbish. And it's like, well, yeah, it probably is for you, but don't start trying to tell other people what they should use just because it's not for you. DJing is a really wide church, and there's gear that's suitable for everyone out there. So you should choose what's right for you and what appeals to you, because there's this push-pull between creativity and technology, isn't there? As soon as you commit to a kind of technology, it's going to influence what you do with it and therefore what you sound like. And it's going to trigger ideas that someone using different tech might not have. So limiting yourself can sometimes make you more creative. Your choice of gear can make you more creative. And one thing, when we set up the Digital DJ Tips School back in 2010, one thing that we said, and the reason that we chose the word digital in our title for our whole school, was that we think the fun happens where music and technology meet. Now, that doesn't mean that the technology has to continually innovate with gimmicks no one uses, but what it does mean is if you find something that appeals to you, run with it, hack it, find a way of using it. The very best DJs have taken features that were designed for one thing and turned them into something completely new that no one else had thought of. So where technology and music meet is where the fun happens. So don't feel that you're not allowed to DJ in whatever damn way you want, using whatever damn gear you want. And Luke is a perfect example of that in our tutor roster, because Luke has gone from DJing on turntables with vinyl through every other permutation and is now doing it with his mobile phone and a DJ controller that, as I say, is about the size of a tall, thin paperback book. It's the size of one of those calendars where you get a month printed vertically and you flip it over to the next month and put it back on your kitchen wall once a month, right? So look, it's a wide church. It's an interesting debate though, and I want to end today by reading through a few comments about this from our community. My wife is commenting, hello Faye, who says, I remember your first controller. Oh, I'm getting all nostalgic now. Yes, you were there peering into the DJ booth at the time, weren't you? When I was too shy to ask you out. Hey, how times have changed. Right, who remembers, says the Rockers, being resistant to transitioning to CDs from vinyl? Now look at us, almost no physical media being used at all. So that is definitely true, right? Remember the resistance there, and then the resistance from the CD DJs to people who were suddenly DJing with laptop. Now, I actually leapt straight from records to digital. In 2003, I was still at the end of the vinyl years and everyone else was starting to use CDs. I didn't like them. I didn't like the look of DVS. I leapt straight to digital. So I kind of went from being one of the Luddites really to being one of the people really ahead of the curve in kind of one go. Sarah says, I guess if we look back over 30 years of innovation in any products, there are new features that fall by the wayside and there's the features that stick. And we soon don't know how we ever coped without them. Yeah, and look, remember, DJs hack things. DJs and producers do things that they weren't meant to do with the gear. You know, the pitch control on Technics turntables was never meant for beat mixing. The Roland 303 was never meant for bass lines. Or rather, it was meant for bass lines, but not big screaming acid house bass lines, etc., etc. So don't think that you can't use gear to do what the hell you want to do with it. And Kesha says really nicely, at the end of the day, it's what you are comfortable with, not what everyone else wants you to be comfortable with. Thank you very much for that comment, Kesha. And I think that's where we'll leave it for today. Thanks for being here. If you've enjoyed listening to this and you want more of the same, then come and join our community at digitaldjtips.com. Also, grab one of our DJ courses if you'd like to learn with us. You get to attend these recordings as a Digital DJ Tips student and ask questions as well, which is a great thing. So from me here in the studio, all that's left is to ask you, if you have enjoyed it, to please just tick a 5-star review somewhere on your Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get this. It really does help us to spread the word. And until next time, get good, get out there and make the moments. I will see you again very soon.